What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Crush City Territory. I'm Chandler Rome, joined by a special co-host today, Adam Spolane, a certified ball knower, a longtime sports radio personality, and a former minor league baseball broadcaster. And before we get into the Astros, I want to heap some praise on Adam real quick to peel the curtain back a little bit. Media jobs are a lot different, right? Like, I'm a beat writer, so I'm at the ballpark 24/7. I'm there every day. TV media, they'll show up every now and then and kind of are haphazard in how they come to things, don't come to things, whatever. A lot of times, most radio personalities you never see. They're usually in their studios hosting their shows. They're doing ad meetings. They're taking calls. They're on the road selling ads. And, just by that byproduct, you never really see them anywhere. And there's a lot of people that then go on the radio, try to talk about the teams they cover without ever seeing them. Adam is the complete antithesis of that. There is no one in the Houston marketplace that works in radio that shows up to more things than Adam Spolane, and he deserves a ton of credit for that, deserves a ton of credit for being on the ground, being the guys asking a ton of questions, and has a lot of insight on what's going on. So, Adam, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you taking some time to talk some Astros with us.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind words today and back 10 and a half weeks ago after everything went down. I mean, the key word now is was in the clubhouse all the time. Not really there anymore, but still watching and still following all the coverage that you guys do, and miss seeing you guys every day. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Real quick, before we get into the Astros, let's talk about the Colorado Rockies, because I think a lot of fans are going to tune in and wonder kind of, who is this? Why are you around? So take us through your baseball background real quick before we get into the Astros, how you came up in the minor leagues, some players you saw, some things you saw. Take us through kind of your baseball background.
So I started out working in the media here when I was in college back in, the mid 2000s, kind of doing what I was doing, before for Sports Radio 610, finished college at Indiana. I was the first broadcaster basically that Indiana baseball ever had. And this is in 2008 when the program really started to get pretty good. They went to the NCAA tournament in 2009. They had a bunch of guys drafted on day one of the draft in 2009. And then a few years later, they were in the College World Series. So I kind of saw that program start getting to the point where it is today, where it's a decent Big Ten program still.
Did you and Kyle Schwarber overlap?
No. So Schwarber was on the 2013, 2014 team. So I was gone, 2008. So we had Josh Fagley was a catcher, I think, for the A's and the White Sox. He was a day one pick. Eric Arnett was a first round pick by the Brewers in 2009. And then there was a left-handed pitcher, Matt Bayshore, who I think he might have been a second round pick by Minnesota. And so those are the guys that I really got to see. And there are a couple other guys that got drafted too off those teams. So I missed the great team. I saw what was a pretty good team. So then I finished college in 2008 and I started in broadcasting. And so I was in independent ball for a year in Pensacola, Florida with the Pensacola Pelicans, which is actually, I believe, where Joe Espada's playing career ended.
Yes. He and I believe he and Carlos Mendoza, both the current Mets manager, they were both Pensacola Pelicans.
Yeah, so I've never had a chance to bring that up with Joe before, but I always kind of wanted to. It was an interesting time. The travel there was awful. My first road trip was Pensacola to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Oof. And so you could fly from Pensacola, but it's expensive. So we took a bus to New Orleans at like 5:00 in the morning, flew from New Orleans to Dallas to Omaha, and then we drive from Omaha to Sioux Falls. We finished that trip in Lincoln. The last game of that first road trip was a 2:30 game in Lincoln, but we had to wait and leave the Monday morning because, again, it's cheaper. Yeah. So we had to stay. So we stayed kind of overnight in Lincoln, but we had like a 4 a.m. bus to go to Omaha so that we could fly back to Dallas, fly to New Orleans, take a bus from New Orleans to Pensacola, play a game that day. The bus was like 3 hours late picking us up in New Orleans. So we get to the park at like 6:30 for a 7:30 game. So that's kind of how things started for me. Then wound up in the Rockies organization. Casper Ghosts, 2009. That's where Nolan Arenado started his career. He was with me for that year. Corey Dickerson in 2010, Trevor Story in 2011. The club moved to Grand Junction. I moved with them. And I was there for 7 more years. I had David Dahl was an all-star. Eddie Butler was a first-round pick that I had. Ryan McMahon, an all-star. Carlos Esteves was on the 2013 team that made the playoffs. I had Kyle Freeland. And then more recently, I had Ryan Feltner, who I think is just going to be, who has a chance to be really good if he can stay healthy. So that was 2018, my last year.
There's a lot of Rockies, and it kind of puts into perspective kind of how rudderless the Rockies seem when you name all of those very good players and you look at what they have become.
They were a smart, well thought of organization when I got there, and even through the time when I left, and it's kind of gone downhill a little bit in the 7 years since I've been gone.
It's that's pretty evident. That not only has it gone downhill, it has rolled downhill very quickly, and no one can stop that downhill avalanche. No one tuned in to Crush City territory to listen about the Colorado Rockies. They did want to talk about the Houston Astros, who went to Arlington this weekend and split 4 games, Adam, with a Texas Rangers team that, quite frankly, I think looks like a carbon copy of the Astros. I think the Rangers have the deeper rotation. The Astros certainly have the deeper bullpen, but these are 2 lineups that have guys in them that have produced before and that have track records of success that are just not hitting. And it's 2 tough lineups to watch at the moment, and it kind of bore out. I mean, it was a compelling series, 4 games, a lot of one-run games, a lot of big swings, a lot of big pitches late in games against that lineup. But overall, what did you take away from that 2-2 series that the Astros played against the Rangers?
And both teams have important guys who are hurt right now too.
Right.
And so no Corey Seager for the Rangers, no Yordan Alvarez for the Astros. I thought they came off, like you said, pretty evenly matched. And I think that it's a division that seems like it's going to be very evenly matched. I know Seattle just swept San Diego, and so they've got a little bit of an edge on everybody else right now. But it feels like it's a division that is reminiscent of 23 when it came down to that last weekend. And that's kind of how I feel it's going to go down this season, unless somebody breaks out or somebody makes some sort of a move, which I don't know if that's going to happen unless Seattle continues on the rate that they're at, which I don't necessarily see because we just haven't seen that consistently from the Mariners before. I think the thing that stood out to me just from an Astros standpoint was the McCullers start on Friday. Like, it's not a great start by any stretch, but the fact that he was able to bounce back and get you outs and feel like he was making progress, I think that moving forward, that's what I will take most out of the last 4 games is just he was able to recover. He looked okay, and he seems to be in a pretty good place right now.
Yeah, let's talk about Lance real quick. We're not going to throw a party for getting 12 outs. And Lance didn't want to throw a party after the game in Arlington. He said he wants to get deeper into games and he wants to kind of become the pitcher that he was prior to all the injuries. But make no mistake, like that was what he did on Friday night was a demonstrative step in the right direction for him. It couldn't have gone any worse than what he did against the Reds 6 days ago. And then obviously he had a bunch of off the field stuff with the threats that were aimed at him. He had a lot going on in the 6 days between the Reds start and the Rangers start. And to go out there and again, he threw a ton more strikes. The misses were more competitive. The misses were close. The swing and miss is still not there. He only got 7 whiffs on 38 swings. He talked about that after the game. He's got to get a couple more he's got to get his put away stuff better. When you look, I believe the Rangers fouled off like 17 or 18 pitches. And of those 17 or 18 foul balls, 10 of them were his changeup or his slider, which are the 2 pitches that he will go to get punch outs. And when he doesn't have that kind of stuff, that's what leads to longer at bats. It leads to, the 20 pitch innings and the unsustainable pitch count. He needed 68 pitches to get his first 9 outs on Friday. Now we should note that between him and Jeremy Pena, they botched a tailor-made double play ball in the second inning. If they complete that double play, it stands to reason, Adam, he probably gives them 5 innings and maybe doesn't allow a run either because all the runs came after that botched double play ball, which forced him to throw 17 extra pitches in that inning. So you can play woulda, coulda, shoulda all night. But, I mean, honestly, if they turn that double play, if McCullers makes a little bit better throw or if Jeremy Pena, a Gold Glove shortstop, makes the catch on the throw he did make, you're looking at, a 5-inning start, and I think the Astros will take that any day of the week from Lance McCullers.
Yeah, and it's not just 17 extra pitches; it's 17 extra like high stress pitches against what is still a pretty good lineup in kind of a hostile environment. I think one thing you wrote this Friday about him needing to basically find his identity again as a pitcher, and you can tell he's still trying to figure that out. And this is a guy who, when he first came up, he was four seam, curveball, mix, and a changeup, and then in 21 and 22, he's two seam, slider to righties, curveball, changeup, cutter to lefties, and you're still trying. He's different now, and he's throwing sliders now to left-handed hitters. That's not something that he really did before. I think it was pitch 44 until he threw a curveball on Friday. So he's still trying to like figure out like what works best stuff wise. And he can't just pick up where he left off. I think that Justin Verlander kind of ruined it for everyone, where Verlander missed 2 years and returns and is just like basically the same guy and winning Cy Youngs. Like, that's not normal. Like, it's going to take him some time to like figure out what works best, how his stuff plays. He's, like I said, the arm angle is different now than it was when he got hurt in 22. So it's going to be a process. It's not something that's going that's going to happen overnight, but you just want to see like little steps. And there are going to be starts like Cincinnati where he takes like 3 steps backwards. It's going to happen. But as long as his arm feels good, I think that's really what matters more than anything else at this point. Velocity is still a little bit low, but I figured that's going to come back up at some point.
Yeah, he did get up to about 93 and a half against the Rangers, which was a little bit of a step up, but still, like, I don't think Lance McCullers is going to be throwing 95 anytime soon. I don't think that'll come back maybe ever. And he knows that, and he's kind of rationalized with that and reasoned with that. And he knows he's going to have to be a little bit different. Like you just mentioned, it took until pitch 44 to throw a curveball. Like, this is not 24 straight curveballs Lance McCullers anymore.
That's never happening again.
Right. And that was even before the injury, because before the injury, that curveball had really become a show pitch to lefties. Like, he had gone so heavy to the changeup, so heavy to the slider, and then the two seam. He even talked about what he did against the Rangers. He backdoored the two seam a little bit, so he was manipulating the two seam in ways that he hadn't in the rehab starts and maybe before his injury. So you're seeing he's going to have to adapt, and it's going to be a feeling out process. And I wrote this after his start in Chicago, after when he returned, that it was going to take patience, and the Astros are prepared to be patient. I think we'd be having a little bit different conversation if he'd have gone to Arlington and gotten, say, 8 outs. I think we would be talking about, how long is that patience going to last? But the way I look at it, there's no reason he shouldn't have gotten 15 outs on Friday. Again, if they turn a double play, then it's a different story. But again, all in all, the Astros will take that any day of the week from Lance McCullers, especially given the unknowns of what they thought they were going to get from him after 915 days. However, Adam, his importance to this rotation grew a ton on Sunday, and we'll talk about that and how important Lance is now right after a message from our friends at Foul Territory.
FT fam, let's talk about the HOF app. If you're into parlays, but sometimes you're missing the mark more than you would like to, can I introduce you to some serious analytics on an app that is easy to read and comprehend? And I'm sitting next to a man who knows how to place a parlay.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is breaking down a parlay with this Hall of Fame app. There's the situations that you'll find easier to do. It's very helpful in understanding, and if you like, gambling, sometimes this is really good to know. So get on that Hall of Fame app and check it out.
Yeah, this is info that will help you, okay? With a 4.9 rating in the App Store and over 6,000 5-star reviews, safe to say that HOF has already helped a lot of people bet smarter. For a limited time only, FT listeners can get a 7-day free trial and 50% off their first month when they use code FOUL at checkout. Download the HOF app on iOS or Android. Enter code FOUL, and you're all set.
So, Adam, I don't think anyone was surprised on Sunday afternoon when Joe Espada began his post-game press conference by announcing what felt inevitable, that Hayden Wesneski will undergo Tommy John surgery in the next couple of days and be out for the remainder of the 2025 season, for presumably parts of the 2026 season. And it's just another blow to a rotation that's already missing Spencer Arrighetti for at least the next month, that didn't have a ton of established depth coming into the season. And certainly now that depth's going to be tested. We just talked about, how much more important Lance McCullers becomes to this rotation without Hayden Wesneski. Obviously, he's a big deal, McCullers, and we've just talked about the runway for him is going to be long. They're going to keep running him out there, and they're going to see if he can build on what he did on Friday in Arlington. But in the wake of the Wesneski news, Adam, who else kind of comes to mind as guys that have to step up and kind of keep this thing stabilized?
It's going to be the minor league guys. And I think that's kind of the big question now is like, do you trust those minor league guys to be able to give you quality outings at this level, especially if they go to a 6-man rotation, because that stresses your bullpen a little bit. If like you're bringing in these minor league guys and they can only give you 4 innings and it's happening too often. So that's the first thing that comes into mind. The second is, okay, they might have to rely on these minor league guys, but what happens like in August and September, and these guys are starting to like really blow past their innings limits, or not limits, but their career highs. And that's where things start to get a little dangerous. And so I asked you this before we started the show, like, do they have enough depth to be able to get them through that? Because it's been interesting. Dana Brown's first 2 years in spring training, he said, we have enough starting pitching. I like our starting pitching depth. And he did the same thing this year. But what's happened the first 2 years? They've had to go out and get a starting pitcher, and they've had to overpay essentially for a starting pitcher. Are they going to be in that same position this July? Because it's hard. Inevitably, somebody else is probably going to get hurt. Like that's just how it works with starting pitchers. So the idea that, they've already lost 40% of their starting rotation from opening day. Are they going to be able to keep everybody else healthy? That to me is a bit of a question mark.
It is to me as well. And look, they will get Spencer Arrighetti back. He's still in the cast as of right now, but if he can get the cast off, I think they're optimistic he can get it off this coming week, and then he can start picking up a baseball again. Once he picks up a baseball, he's not going to get on the mound and start throwing bullpens right off the bat. It's going to be a gradual buildup, but don't think it's going to be a spring training style buildup. So they can maybe get him back within a month after the cast comes off. But again, there's a lot of unknowns with a guy that just missed 2 months with a fractured finger on his pitching hand. Like there's unknowns around that too. As far as the minor leaguers go, Colton Gordon's going to get another start on Monday against the Tampa Bay Rays at Steinbrenner Field. I'm not sure what their plan is for Ryan Gusto at this point. He was in the bullpen this whole weekend in Arlington, came in Saturday's game after Ronel Blanco threw 30 pitches and did not look very good, was spraying the ball everywhere, walked a couple guys. He has not looked good in his bullpen appearances, but has, he's held his own as a starter absent the start against Kansas City where he didn't get out of the third inning. So those two guys are the main ones. And then, you kind of look at AAA, they've got AJ Blueball who came up and made the spot start against the Tigers, and he's on the 40-man and he can come up and provide some insurance if they need. They've got Miguel Ulloa, who is striking out the world in AAA, doesn't always know where the ball's going, but can miss bats and, has some command issues. But again, he's got pure stuff that can come up and help. They've got Tyler Ivey down there, who came out of retirement after 2 years and is actually pitching very well for AAA Sugarland, a guy that's been in the big leagues and done it before. But yeah, Adam, they could be again in the market in July for a starting pitcher, presuming that they're still in the hunt. And they're buyers. Yeah, this could be another year where they're looking for starting pitching. And you and I both know that that's not going to be their foremost need at the deadline. Like they are going to need to get a bat because this lineup is obviously a bat short, maybe even 2. But yeah, losing Wesneski for this season, it's going to put a lot of pressure on those guys we just mentioned. But I do wonder, for Hayden Wesneski himself, what does this mean for his future? Because this is a guy that he is arbitration eligible this coming winter for the first time, which means the Astros could non-tender him and not offer him a contract and release him. I don't think that's the route they go for a couple reasons. One, because he's got 2 more years of team control after that. So they could pay him, let him rehab for into next year. And if he comes back at the end of next year, great. You have him for the next 2 years. And he's first year ARB eligible. I can't imagine he's going to be making a meaningful amount of money. I'd imagine around 2.5, maybe. And they've got a lot of money coming off the books, so they're not going to be as worried about the luxury tax as they are this year. But are you in line with that? Do you think that he is a non-tender candidate at all? Or
No. I think that if you are going to non-tender a guy, an ARB1 guy, a starting pitcher who you like think is really good, then you got some serious issues like that. There's some financial issues that you must be running into. So no, you have to tender him. I mean, it's very similar to Luis Garcia a couple years ago when I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Luis Garcia was either an ARB1 or going into his ARB2 year. When he had TJ and they tendered him. So I think you have to tender Wesneski. Like you said, you might lose next year, but you still get the 2 more years after that. And so if you think that he is, and they obviously liked him because he was part of the Kyle Tucker trade. So like you figure there was something there that they liked. So because of that, you have to offer him a contract for next year and just keep him in the organization for another 3 years.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he is in the Kyle Tucker trade, I think that works in his favor as well, because we have seen how Dana Brown has treated one member of the Kyle Tucker trade and Cam Smith, who has made the major league roster after having a cup of coffee in the minor leagues. I think it would optically not look great if you cut ties with a guy that was in the Tucker trade after 6 games he appeared as an Astro. The only reason I think it could be a discussion is, I mean, we just talked about not having pitching depth, but if you look what they have coming back next year, presuming they lose Framber Valdez to free agency, they'll still have Brown, Arrighetti, McCullers, Blanco, Garcia, Javier, France. That's 7 guys that have pitched substantial innings at the major league level. That's not counting Blueball, Gordon, Gusto, Uloa, and whatever other young pitching prospects make the rise this year. So you can start to count that they will have rotation depth next year, and it's not a place where they're going to be desperate to maybe get a guy. That'd be the only thought in my head as to maybe why they would consider not. But yeah, everything points to Hayden Wesneski, coming back and getting tendered a contract. Just brutal news though for a guy that Adam, you've seen him, you've interviewed him, you've dealt with him. Was very happy, is very happy to be back in Houston. Grew up here, went to Sam Houston State. Grew up an Astros fan. Got pretty emotional actually when he pitched his first home game at Dyken Park, a place that he had when it was still Minute Maid Park when he went as a kid. Tough blow for him. He even said, we talked to him after the game today when it kind of been finalized, and he held it together, but he said he was still kind of in denial about the whole thing and doesn't really think it's going to set in for a while.
No, it sucks for all these guys who have to deal with an injury like that. That's going to knock you out for, it's more than a year that it takes off your career. And it's obviously a physical grind. It's just a mental grind. And you've dealt with McCullers throughout this whole thing. Yeah. Like you feel terrible for him. Like these guys don't want to get hurt. Like that's not the goal. Like they take care of they focus on taking care of their arms and like doing all that maintenance that comes with it. And you can't control what happens to your ligaments. Like you just can't. And so you feel bad for him. He seemed to just be really excited to get not just to pitch at home, but like to pitch for this organization, which is very good at figuring things out with pitchers and really turning a lot of careers around. And so now he's almost got to start from scratch at this point. So you feel bad for him, but you mentioned the depth. And we can sit here and say that they've got all this depth that might be coming back next year, but you're a bad week away from having no depth. And we saw it a couple of years ago where they lost Urquidy and Garcia on back-to-back days. And, Urquidy still hasn't pitched for them, and Urquidy, missed 4 months, came back, got hurt again. So you just never know when it comes with starting pitchers. That's why, to me, you've got to have as many in the organization as you possibly can. And I don't think you can ever have too many.
Yeah, and with this team, you're a batting practice incident away too from losing. They lost 2 pitchers. Sean Dubin rolled his ankle stepping on a baseball in the outfield during batting practice in AAA after Spencer Arrighetti broke his thumb in a batting practice incident. So yeah, like you mentioned, and it's why we were talking about this before the show. We had a previous podcast where I kind of had to tell people, no, they're not trading Framber Valdez at the deadline if they're in it, because pitching depth depletes and pitching depth dries up. And I don't think anyone realizes what a luxury it is to have a guy like Framber Valdez and Hunter Brown, for that matter, who at this point you can pencil in every time they go out there, they're going to get you into the 6th inning and most of the days into the 7th. That is a luxury that not a lot of teams have. and they should cherish that and not try to mess around and get too cute by half and say, oh, we've got these guys pitching well at the minor leagues. We can get some prospects for Valdez and like still make the playoffs. No. That's not how this works.
And most of these prospects tend to fail. Like there's a reason why teams are okay giving up prospects sometimes is because they don't necessarily believe in them. And I found the Framber angst this season just kind of strange. It's like, this guy is really good and has been really good and really reliable for a long time. Like that's not suddenly going to change because he gives up some weak base hits, and stuff like that. So I've always found that to be weird. The other, you mentioned Framber and Brown as reliable guys. I think Blanco has to kind of start to move into that reliable guy conversation. Just like he's never going to be a guy that like finishes with like the highest ERA or anything like that. But I feel like you can trust that he's going to, on most nights, at least give you 6. And he's going to make every turn in the rotation. And I think that especially on a team that's lost as many starters as it has over the last couple of years, I think something like that matters. So it feels like he posts every single time.
Yeah, I do agree. But you do look at this year, 5 of his first 6 starts, he failed to pitch into the 6th inning.
Okay, I was wrong.
Now, in his last 3 starts, he's gone 6 innings, 8 innings, 6 innings. And we actually talked about this on one of our recent pods. Dana Brown and Joe Espada have both said this. They didn't let Ronel Blanco play winter ball this past winter because he threw so much last year. And as everybody knows, Ronel Blanco was the king of Dominican winter ball. Like he went down there and dominated for like 5 years straight. And Dana Brown thinks it's because they didn't let him play winter ball that he came into the season this year a little lackluster. Didn't start off maybe as crisp as he had before. So maybe now that he's settling in, he's gone 6 innings, 8 innings, 6 innings, and 3 straight starts. Yeah, you can start to move him maybe into that reliable category. But I think I need to see it a couple of more times. But again, they should feel very comfortable about the top 3 guys in their rotation. And one thing you said about Framber, and it got me thinking, how much do you think the dominance that Hunter Brown is having this year is maybe to Framber's detriment? Because everyone's watching Hunter Brown go out there and not give up anything every time. He's got a 1.4 ERA right now, and he just goes out there, and what he is doing is otherworldly. And I think everyone may expect that from Framber because Framber was the quote unquote ace of this team. Framber just does it a little bit differently. Like he's going to give up hits. He's going to give there are some days where he's really on and the curveball's disgusting and he's missing a ton of bats. But inherently with how he throws and he's a sinker baller, his bread and butter is getting ground balls, is getting the ball put in play sometimes. Sometimes balls have eyes, they find holes, and that happens. But that was kind of interesting to me, just kind of a thought that like maybe is Hunter Brown's dominance, maybe like do fans see that and expect that out of Framber when they don't get it? They think something's wrong.
Well, you look at the start today, he gives up the runs in what was the 3rd or 4th inning, and that rally starts because they just shoot a couple balls through the hole in the infield. Like that's going to happen sometimes with him. It's like, can you get the double play? Can he keep his composure on the mound? I think sometimes Framber can be a victim of expectations. Like you saw, he had the very long quality start streak in 22, and you're just and he was so good that postseason that you're almost just expecting that. And that's just not how it works, especially like you said, with a guy who kind of pitches the way that he does. And I think that from a fan standpoint, people probably remember the Tigers series. And they remember that he didn't pitch real well in that Rangers series either. And so that kind of sticks with fans a little bit. So I in a sense, I get it. But like at the same time, he's been just absurdly good now for 5 or 6 years. And this era wouldn't be what it was without what Framber Valdez did starting in 2020.
He's going to get upwards of $170 million this winter for a reason, because there are teams that would crawl over broken glass to have Framber Valdez at the top of their contending teams that would crawl over broken glass to have Framber Valdez at the top of the rotation.
And real quick, Hunter Brown's probably going to get 200. So
he's going to get he may push over 200. He is insane, man. Yes. He is that I talked a lot about the DeGrom Brown duel in the last pod, but like I don't know if you saw it the same way. Like Jacob DeGrom's incredible. Like that was an incredible game to watch beginning to end, but I don't know how you came out of that game and didn't think that Hunter Brown was the more dominant pitcher in that game that night.
The thing that stuck out to me is, why are you throwing a cutter? Don't get beat on that pitch. Get beat on like your good stuff. So that's the lasting impression I had with that game. Is like, don't throw the cutter in that spot. Just stick with what. Sometimes these pitchers throw too many pitches and they try and get too cute and it beats you. So.
Just blow 99 by him.
Yeah, that's all you have to do.
We've talked a lot of pitching, so we will talk about the interesting state of this Astros offense right after this message from our friends at Foul Territory.
Hey, for the card collectors out there, you need to know about Arena Club. You can check out our showrooms. We've all got cards in there. You can buy, you can sell, you can trade, and you can rip packs. They're called slab packs, Kratz. And then what happens if you don't like what you pulled?
You get an instant offer. But before you get that instant offer, you can show your showroom around, kind of like when I used to put the cards in the sleeves and my buddies would come over and show them. Now, bang, show them on the phone. Instant offers right there if I need it.
Yep, that instant offer is for the estimated fair market value. Accept it on the spot. Acquire the best value for your money with slab packs, transparent checklists, and Arena Club's Slab Safe program. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, grading, or ripping packs, Arena Club is the safest, most trusted in the game. Right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul, code FOUL.
So the Astros won a game today with 4 hits. 2 of them left the ballpark, which was just good. And the other 2 preceded one that left the ballpark, which is also good. But all in all, this weekend, I think exacerbated a lot of fans' worries about this offense. So a couple caveats needed to be said. They don't have Yordan Alvarez, who is obviously a massive piece of this thing. The Rangers have, as we just talked about, a very, very, very deep and very good rotation. They rolled out DeGrom, Evaldi, and Molly, all of whom have sub 2.5 ERAs. Jack Leiter, who no-hit them for 6 2/3 innings today, was at one point the best pitching prospect in baseball. So it's not as if they faced 4 like Rule 5 guys that got called up from High A last week. But Adam, this is an offense that doesn't have any semblance of balance. They've got guys at the top of the order, established guys that are scuffling a little bit. We knew coming into the season, you knew after they traded Kyle Tucker and let Alex Bregman walk, this was probably going to be a shorter lineup, very top-heavy lineup, and it's bearing that out. But it really gets exacerbated when Jose Altuve's not producing and when Christian Walker had looked better this weekend, but still the counting stats overall are not good. What have you made of the Astros offense through the first 45, 46 games of this season?
It's not very good. I thought it would be better, but just the fact, and I know you've talked about this a lot, the fact that they don't have any lefties at all. Like, you have guys who should probably be more platoon guys, especially in the outfield at this point. And Espada wants to use the bench. Like Espada, we saw this all last year. Like opening day last year against the Yankees, like 6th inning, he goes to his bench. And he can't do that because they just can't gain a platoon advantage. And so the fact that they did not do anything to address the bench going into 2024. They didn't do anything to address the bench going into this season. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me when you have a manager who, again, wants to go to his bench early and often. So like they aren't doing Espada any favors there. And so you kind of just you roll out a lineup that you think is going to work. And like, you're just kind of stuck with those guys. Yeah. And, you saw Omar Lopez, they didn't play Jeremy Pena today. So like they could at least go to him off the bench, but I'm guessing after Pena, they would like to have had a lefty to use for Mauricio Dubon right after. Yeah. And they just don't have that option. And so like Chas McCormick has taken 7 plate appearances this month. He started 2 games this month. Cesar Salazar's been up for 2 weeks and hasn't played yet. And I get you bring Salazar up so Caratini can be, in the starting lineup, but you're still wasting a roster spot. And so it feels like they just need to do something to not be quite as, no team in baseball has taken more at bats against righties, and no team in baseball has taken fewer at bats against lefties. And like teams can prepare for that. Teams can, I don't know if it's something that you've noticed, but I do remember the Red Series. I think Andrew Abbott was supposed to
No,
start
yeah.
against them on the Sunday game, and then they moved some things around and they switched it up, and they had a righty start the finale of that series. So like the Astros become very easy to prepare against just because you're only going to face right-handed hitters, and like to me, you're just making the other team's job so much easier when you do that. So I just think they need to do something. I don't know if they have any. I don't think they necessarily have any options in AAA, but go outside the organization to just find a left-handed hitter who can give you competitive at bats and professional at bats. And right now they are hurting themselves by playing with 25 when everybody else plays with 26.
Yeah, and I mean, and I've talked about this, and when I wrote about it, I said the same. Like, it doesn't have to be a middle of the order left-handed bat. It has to be a guy that can stand in the left-handed batter's box, give you a competitive quality at bat, and like you said, put the thought into the other manager's head that, like, hey, if I go to this guy, Joe's probably going to send this lefty up. Like, think back to how they won that game on Friday. First of all, like the game on Friday exemplified everything that is wrong with this roster construction. Nate Eovaldi started the game. He allows the lowest OPS against right-handed hitters of any starter in baseball. And the Astros sent out 8 right-handed hitters and a switch-hitting backup catcher, Victor Caratini, who hit 5th that night. If Victor Caratini is hitting 5th in your lineup, then it's no disrespect to Victor Caratini, but just kind of demonstrates how limited the options are here. And the only reason Joe hit him 5th was to get that balance up there, to get more left-handed bats against Eovaldi's left-handed looks. So they chased Nate Eovaldi out of the game. Actually took some good at-bats against him. He was wild, but they took some good at-bats, laid off some chase stuff. They chased him out of the game after 5 2/3 innings. Bruce Bochy goes to a left-handed reliever out of his bullpen, which I don't know why any manager would do it, but why he did it. He turned Victor Caratini around to hit from the right side, where he's been worse his whole career. Caratini flies out. Now, because the Rangers have a couple back-end guys, Chris Martin and Luke Jackson, who were hurting coming into the series, they were going to be very careful in how they used them. So because Boch was trying to protect those back-end guys, he came back out with Hobie Milner, the lefty, for the 6th inning, facing Jake Myers, Yainer Diaz, Cam Smith, Zach DeZenzo. Jake Myers singled. Zach DeZenzo hit an absolute missile to the wall. They got caught at the warning track. Cam Smith singled. Bochy goes to a right-hander. They come in. That's what starts a 6-run inning. So, look, they finally got to face a right-handed hitter face a left-handed reliever. And look, good things happen. But the problem is, like you just said, no manager – Bruce Bochy had to do that because of the constraints with his bullpen. Some guys are hurt. He didn't want to go to his lower leverage guys, and they view Hobie Milner as a leverage lefty. But there are going to be managers that just decide, you know what, like if you throw with your right hand, you're coming in. Like, I don't care what your stats are. I don't care how well you're throwing, how not well you're throwing. You're coming in to face this lineup because they have no recourse. They can't do anything to create any sort of advantage. Now,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, even when Alvarez does come back,
right,
teams just won't pitch to him.
Right.
And they'll say, you know what? We're not even going to mess with this guy. We're going to let our right-handed relievers face all the right-handers that come after him. And that's where I think that guys like Walker and Paredes and some of these other guys, they get hurt is because they don't get to take those at-bats against left-handed relievers. You know, Alex Bregman got to take a lot of at-bats against left-handed relievers the last few years because he's hitting either between or behind Tucker and Alvarez, and teams are lining up lefties to face those two guys. That's not going to happen now. So you're just going to face all these high-leverage right-handed relievers, and it's just going to be really hard to stage rallies and hit for power. Like, you're going to have some things come together. So, like, making a team have to think, making a team have to prepare for other options. It just makes a lot of sense. And I don't know why more thought wasn't given to that before the season started. Like, to not have any lefties at all. It's just bizarre. Can you imagine what Dusty Baker would have said?
I can't.
Without any lefties?
I truly can't. And what I do think he would say is not safe for me to say on this recording. I mean, we've been over why they did this, because Dana Brown wanted to reward guys in spring training that quote unquote won jobs. And Zach DeZenzo and Cam Smith both played their behinds off in spring training. and put up great numbers, and they played well enough to earn roster spots. That Cam Smith was in the Kyle Tucker trade cannot be overstated here. I think that they wanted to prove a little bit of a point to, say, look what we got for Kyle Tucker. And now Cam Smith is up in the big leagues and has graduated from prospect status and has like a 700 OPS. I do wonder though, Adam, like we're talking about all this and like this is a problem and they're going to have to address it and it's going to get addressed. Like they're going to get a left-handed hitter in here at some point, even when Jordan Alvarez comes back. Like I think there is now too much growing pressure that they're going to have to do something. We're probably not talking about this in depth though. If Jose Altuve is like peak Jose Altuve and if Christian Walker is peak Christian Walker, I feel like we've talked the Walker thing we have talked to death about. Let's talk about Jose Altuve. What have you made of the start to his season?
He's 35.
Yes.
And eventually the odds and logic say that when you're 35, you're going to start to slow down. Now, this is a guy who has defied all of that for 20 years. So I don't want to sit here and say that he's cooked when he'll probably wind up going on some long, ridiculous hitting streak, right after to make me look like an idiot. But he's, 35 is 35. There are a couple of things. I was looking through some of the numbers and a couple of things really stood out to me. He's chasing more than, he ever has before, but it's not like a lot more than he ever has before. But the thing that he's not doing, he's not swinging at strikes.
No. And
this is a guy for his career. He swings at 2/3 of the strikes that are thrown to him. That number is below 60% this season. The meatball pitches, this is a guy who swings at those 75% of the time, and he's swinging at 58% of those this year. So the fact that he's not like swinging at the pitches you're supposed to swing at makes me think that he's just like, he's not right. Like there's something there that he might just be in his own head with some of this stuff. So that's what stood out to me. And the fact that he has started all but 2 games this year, like he's 35, maybe give him a little bit more time off. I know he's DH'd a couple of times here recently, including today, but there's probably no reason for him to be playing as much as he is, especially it's not like they're in a 12-game hole like they were last year.
His ground ball rate's about 56%, which, I mean, again, he's 35 years old. He's still got decent sprint speed. It's not what it used to be. He's still athletic enough to get down the line. He can beat out an infield hit, but he's not hitting the ball on a line. He's hitting too many pop-ups. And the weird thing is he's getting the same amount of strikes. Like he's seeing the same amount of strikes as he usually sees. So it's not like pitchers are necessarily like avoiding him or making him like go to the outer edges, maybe because they know that his batted ball skills are so good that it doesn't matter where they pitch it. He can probably get a bat on it. But yeah, it's at this point, I do think he's in his own head a little bit. He did speak after the game on Saturday and he said everything you would expect Jose Altuve to say, that he's not quite there, that the at-bats haven't been good enough, but he thinks, he'll get a couple hard hit balls and he's ready to go. He's not usually the most insightful as far as like what he's working through. He owned it. He owned that he's not been playing well. But not real much in insight as like to what he can do to fix it. As far as what the Astros can do to fix it, I had a couple people, ask, why is he still hitting second? Why is he still hitting up there? Like, I think Joe's hands are tied at this point. Like, I don't know who do you want to hit up? Yeah. They don't have a ton here, guys. Like, I know Jake Myers has been a nice story for the first couple months. I don't think you want him hitting second. I don't think you want many guys at the bottom half of this lineup hitting at the top half. So he's Jose Altuve. Like at some point, they've got to have faith that he's going to turn it around. And like you said, this is why I sometimes hesitate to talk about Jose Altuve, because as well as I do, that he is going to, on this upcoming 10-game homestand, he'll probably have 2 hits every game, and his average will be back up to 300. We'll all look like Chicken Littles that were running and proclaiming his decline too quick. But age does come for everyone, even Justin Verlander. Like age comes for everyone. And I don't want to use the D word yet. I don't want to use decline yet, but he's, even when you look at some of his expected stuff, like his Savant page right now is a lot of blue. It's a lot of blue. And when you kind of start to think about it, they have 4 more years of this, like, because so they better hope that this is just a funk of a month, that, he can find a way to get it back, because they've got him for 4 more years. And look, Jose Altuve could retire tomorrow, and his legacy here is forever cemented as, in my opinion, the greatest player to ever wear an Astros uniform. But they have some real questions to ask about him right now, because we're talking about the imbalance, and that's something that needs to be addressed. But if he's not hitting, and if Yordan Alvarez comes back and he's not producing, then it doesn't matter what balance they bring to this thing. They're not going anywhere.
Well, it also hurts just from like a roster construction standpoint, just because he's making more than any position player has ever made for them. Not just this year, but the two that come after it. And so if he doesn't produce, it's hard to get other guys that are going to be able to fill that void. So to me, I think the big thing is don't play him 44 out of 46 games. Like, especially when you consider that he is playing the outfield now. And so that's going to zap some of your energy. I think they can afford, especially, DeCinzo has done a nice, he's played okay. He's handled himself pretty well up here so far this season. The two guys at second base, offensively, it's not great, but defensively, they can more than hold their own. So to me, I think that gives you just a little bit more rope to give him some time off and to say, hey, he just had a hamstring injury last week and he played 7 straight games after coming back from that. Like, to me, that's an opportunity to play him 6 out of 7 days, or maybe 5 out of 7, bring him off the bench a couple, try to get him off his feet just a little bit, just because he's 35 and, 35-year-olds don't necessarily do great when they're having to play as much as he is. And last year they played him 153 games. They kind of had to because of the hole that they dug, but I thought he faded towards the end of last year. So they got to try and get him to September, and playing him 44 out of 46 games, I don't think is the best way to do that.
It's one, and Adam, you've been in enough clubhouses. You've been like on part of teams to understand what I'm about to say. It's one thing for us to say that.
Yeah.
It's another thing for a second-year manager who has Joe Espada has known Jose Altuve for a while, but still a second-year manager to go to a surefire Hall of Famer and a franchise icon. And they have already asked him to move positions, and he has been very graceful and said, yes, I'll do it. Is as selfless a player as you will find of someone of his stature. It's a whole different story when you start taking at bats away from a guy that wants to get 3,000 hits.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think the way you have to present it to him is just like tell him what the benefits are, though. Like, if you tell him, hey, we think that this is going to make you better by sitting you once a week, then I think that he'll probably take to it. Like now, that's me saying it. Actually doing it and having Joe like go to him and saying that's a whole other story. But to me, if you present it in a way that you show him the benefits, I think it can work. But again, I don't know Jose Altuve well enough to know if he'll take to that sort of a thing. But just because it's hard, like it's hard getting old. It's kind of hard, seeing your own mortality flash before your eyes when you've been doing this at such a high level for such a long time. But I do think that it might help him to not play him nearly as much. And I just think you have to get that message across. And I think that it only benefits everybody. And like you said, he's been incredibly selfless. I think that from a culture standpoint, they are what they are because of him, because he's been the best player for this entire stretch. And you wouldn't know it just because of how he carries himself. But it's also like, hey, we think that if you tell him, hey, we think that this will help get you to 3,000, then maybe he's receptive to it.
And again, you just said he is, we've talked about this ad nauseum, he is as selfless of a player as you will find. I say that, and I'm also going to say at his extension press conference last winter, Scott Boras made it a point to say we structured this contract so he could get 3,000 hits.
Yeah.
Like 3,000 hits is, I'm not going to say that's his foremost, like he is the team first guy. He wants to win World Series. He wants to win pennants. Like, that is what I believe he prioritizes. But anytime he says he's not thinking about 3,000 hits or 3,000 hits is too far away for him to think about, he's lying. This is something that he wants this. And I think it's going to be, yes, you're right. If they can find a way to sit him down and be like, look, we've done the science, we've done the math, we've got all your measurements of when you sit out days, of when you don't sit out days, and they present it to him, I'm sure they could make a really compelling argument to him. But at the end of the day, I think if it were me, the way I would think is you're taking 5 chances away from me every week that I can maybe get a couple hits. And if I get to the last year of this contract and I'm at 2,962 hits and we're in the end of September and my contract's up, maybe I could have gotten them in these times you had me. So again, I don't envy Joe Espada. I don't envy Dana Brown because it's a conversation. And again, I don't think they're there yet. I think we're talking pretty prematurely here. I don't think they're there of having to have this come to Jesus with him because, like we said, like he could go to this minor league park they're about to play in for 3 games and hit 700 in these 3 games, and everything would be fine. And we're not talking about this anymore. But the level of the unproductive at bats recently has prompted such an interesting discussion with Altuve.
And the funny thing is, I hear Dusty in the background talking about how it takes older players longer to get going. He actually started the season really well.
He was great.
Yeah, the first 13 or 14 games, he was great. And it's like the last 30, 31 games, he's got like a 500 OPS. So that's kind of that's what makes me think that, okay, he probably will wind up snapping out of this. And, maybe he won't have the 850 OPS at the end of the year, but it'll be near the levels to where you would expect from a guy his age who has had the career that he's had, but it's been ugly. And he is what I think last time I looked, Baseball Reference WAR had him at, negative 0.8. Like that's not great at this point. So it's tough. Like that's the hard part with signing these guys as they get older is that you've got to make some tough decisions with it. And they have done things to avoid having to do that with Bregman and with Springer and Correa. Like they don't have to have those conversations with those guys, but they're gonna have to have it with this guy at some point.
It's one that I'm happy I don't have to have. I'm happy I don't have to be in that room. I'm sure you're happy you don't have to be in that room. We're just going to be in this room talking about the Astros on Crush City territory. Adam, this was great. I appreciate you taking I told you I was going to keep you for 30 minutes. I kept you for 51 minutes. I apologize for that. I thank you very much. This was an enlightening conversation. I'm glad we got together. Glad we got to chop it up. If you're interested in hearing more, please subscribe to the Crush City Territory YouTube channel. You can get notifications every time we go live. Please rate and review us on Apple. You can follow me on X at Chandler_Rome. Adam, tell the people where they can follow you and see what you got going on.
Adam Spolane, ADAM SPOLANE, no spaces.
Yep, there you go. Follow both of us, and we will be back sometime this week. We have a special guest on Tuesday. Member of the Astros traveling party that I think a lot of people will enjoy hearing from. And then Josh Reddick will be back on Wednesday. He went on a 9-day cruise with his wife and kids, so I'm sure he's going to bring some interesting stories from the sea. But thanks, Adam, again for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.